Okay, I am going to discuss the book, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. I'm doing this because I always look for book reviews on books I love, and I never seem to find enough of them to sort of quench my thirst. You know what I mean? Like it's like I look, and there's only so many, and I get tired of not being able to find any. So I'm going to make some of my own. The contents of this video is pretty much just me talking about some of my experience with reading this book, and if this doesn't interest you, then I don't blame you for feeling that way, and I invite you to stop watching because the last thing I want to do is misrepresent one of my videos or to leave someone feeling like they've totally wasted their time watching it. It's just me talking about a book, and if you get to the end and say, like, wow, that was just him talking about a book, then you can't say I didn't warn you. I will be touching on various themes and occurrences found throughout the book, and much of what I discuss may be considered spoilers. Uh, if you have not read the Walnut Bird Chronicle, I would suggest that you go right now, either go to a bookstore or go to Amazon and order it, or order it like on your Kindle or on your iPad for the Kindle app because it's a really great book. And let's see. I'd hate to ruin your experience if you have not read the book yet, so you should probably stop watching right now, like now, like hit the X button now, and don't watch the video anymore. Um, if you just want a heads up, like a review, like should I buy this book? Because a lot of times I look for YouTube reviews, whether I should buy books or not. You should absolutely buy the book. It's a great book. It takes place in Japan. It's in the 80s. It's sort of fantastical. There's it's like it takes place in like a normal setting while it's like it has like a lot of fantasy elements in it and things like that. It's a really cool book, and I'd really suggest that you read it. Especially if you like Murakami. I've read most of his books now, and it's definitely, in my opinion, his best book. Even though I really like Kafka too. Um, it's a long book. It's like 600. I can't remember exactly how many pages. It was 600 or 700 pages long. It takes a little while to read, unless you're like a really fast reader. I'm not. I tend to plod through it, but it's a really good book, and I definitely suggest it. So for the review, read it and stop watching if you haven't read it already. Okay, let me start off by thanking you for watching my video, and I also say that I'm a huge fan of Murakami's work. I try to write myself from time to time, but while I don't necessarily count him as an influence of mine on the things that I'm trying to do or whatever, I appreciate the charm and attention to detail that he effectively brings in his work. He can make mundane details just very interesting and charming, and he's just it's a fun read. There's a lot of other popular writers that while they're fun to read, it's kind of heavy. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things like I've recently just read all the Ice and Fire books, and that thing is pretty heavy after a while. You know what I mean? Murakami, while there's definitely some crazy stuff that happens in his books, it doesn't really get heavy like that, And even in Bird Chronicle, where there's some really serious things that go on, matters of life and death, and matters of love and loss and everything like that. War. There's still a sense of it's almost, I wouldn't say whimsical, but there's a sense of charm to everything he does, and there's not really another writer that I can say does it quite like he does. And that's really one of the reasons why. Plus, I love all Japanese things. I'd love to go to Japan one day. I'm trying to learn the language, and I've been trying to learn the language for a while, and so that's part of my interest in it. All right, well, I love the book. There were times where I wasn't sure where the book was going, but because I've read several of his other works, this didn't dissuade me, and I sort of learned to you learn to trust writers that you really like, and like I said, I just recently read all the Ice and Fire books, and those books are so long that eventually they become a little tedious because there's so much stuff in the book, and like I said, I'm sort of a slow reader. I can read fast if I want to, but I sort of like to enjoy it. I like to get like some coffee and just chill out, and it kind of gets really tedious after a while, especially when you don't feel like things are moving very fast, and I understand it's a process, but I would be lying if I didn't say that it didn't get tedious. Well, the Londenberg Chronicle is well over 600 pages, and I never felt that way, not one time. The way the book is written, the way the narrative sort of goes along, it's really interesting, and it doesn't it's not a heavy book. Like it doesn't really take a toll on you when you read it. Um, let's see. Okay. Let's see. The book wasn't really like that, it wasn't really long. I immediately felt connection to the lead character. Toru Okada is his name. Um, I'm in college right now, and I can relate. He's sort of like in a rut. He doesn't have a job right now, and he's trying to get through his everyday and dealing with that. The way Murakami instantly began, it's like he's like cooking spaghetti, and then there's like he gets like a sexual phone call, and I thought that was it kind of lit an instant spark for me. I bought the book a couple months before I actually started to read it, and like on the way home from Borders, I read like a couple pages, and I really like Murakami, but whenever I read a book, I try to read it straight through, so I like to make sure that I don't have anything else in my mind, things like that. And so I read a couple pages and I put it down, and I was like, well, dude's making spaghetti, and like I said, it's charming and it's interesting, but I'll read it later. Well, I picked back up where I stopped, and like three more paragraphs, and he gets like a phone call. The first sexual phone call he gets, and I felt silly for not making time to read it prior due to just like the duality of the first chapter. It sort of sucks you in. It's actually a lot like IQ 84, where Amami, it's like the first chapter, you get a sense of what she's doing, and you sort of make up your mind on like what type of person she is. And then the third chapter comes around where that's her chapter because it switches between the characters. But the third chapter is her, and then it like totally turns her upside down immediately, and it just sucks you in. Like it shows you that there's just this multifaceted part, parts of the story. And I think Murakami did that really well. Um, anyway, the way Murakami describes Japan, it's almost mystical in the story, and as is often the case in his works, he makes the tedious sound interesting. You still in the back of your mind, in the back of your mind it's supposed to be tedious. He's making peppers and pasta and everything else. It's pretty boring for most people, but he makes them exciting somehow. But knowing they're tedious, just because you recognize those as like everyday mundane events, it sort of makes like a gap between the tediousness and some of the crazy stuff that he throws in there, like when you don't expect it, and it just has such a dramatic effect, And it's like the tedious offers a gap, between those events and some of the more fantastic elements of the book, such as the psychics and the alternate dimensions and things like that. You know, uh, more commonly reinforce my romanticized vision of Japan, and especially the One Up Bird and After Dark as well. That's another great book of his. Not quite as long, but I would definitely recommend it. I find the way he presents Japan very interesting because everything I've read about Murakami is that he's like he intentionally depicts a sort of counterculture to traditional Japan because he so despises like the traditional Japanese sort of macho culture, like the samurai culture. Um, Murakami thrives on vulnerability in his books, and with talking to many people both from Japan and who visited Japan, I often hear that the Japanese, they don't really make it a habit of discussing their feelings, or talking about difficult or like melancholy subjects. In many works, especially this one, Murakami he just offers inner glimpses of emotional struggle, all held alongside like just this constant loneliness in pretty much all of his characters. And I find these elements fascinating because it's like he represents, it's always said that he represents the opposite of Japan, but yet he captures the essence of everything that you always hear about what it's like there, all at the same time. It's very interesting. There's such a duality to what he does.